What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Emerald Grappling Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Murphy. Today, I'm in Sligo. I'm at Atlantic Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm delighted to be joined by head coach and owner, Ryan Smyth. For anyone who doesn't know Ryan, he's a second-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, head coach here in Atlantic in Sligo, and a Gaeilge. Would that be the correct pronunciation?
No, I wouldn't go as far as to call myself a Gaeilge. I'm practicing.
Perfect. So, Ryan, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today and for your time, most importantly. And for anyone who might not know you, maybe you can tell us about yourself, your background, and how you got started in Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, I started Jiu-Jitsu 20 years ago. We did a self-defense course here in Sligo with the local karate club. There was two of the pioneers of Jiu-Jitsu in Sligo, was Mickey Downs and Francie Mahan, who were black belts in the karate club, and they ran a self-defense course which involved a lot of grappling and jiu-jitsu based skills and striking too as well, and it was a great introduction for us at the time. Myself and my brother Morgan, we did the course together. I think it was around October of 2004, and gave us a taste of what jiu-jitsu was about. And at that time, it was very early days, and Jiu-Jitsu was still at an early stage in Ireland overall. And at that stage, there wasn't any black belts or even maybe one purple belt, maybe two. So there wasn't such a high level at the time, but that's how we got our first taste of it and got involved from that point. And immediately we just fell in love with it. We thought it was an amazing martial art. The whole concept of grappling and grabbing people, getting them down to the ground, and the idea of that a smaller person could have a chance against a bigger person in some kind of one-to-one confrontation was very appealing. So we really enjoyed that. Great experience. We went through the years. Then we just got more involved, and in the early days, I'd say we were more doing kind of MMA type training. The MMA league was a big draw at that time, and we were doing a lot of MMA and striking. We were still a wee bit kind of into the karate and other types of striking. But then as time went on, we just wanted to do more with the grappling. And so the grappling in Sligo had kind of diminished a bit then. Wasn't much going on for a while. Mickey had gone away from the sport for a little bit. And myself and Morgan continued to train, and then maybe a year or two later we met up with Mickey again. We got back together and we started training together. So that was another kind of a point where we'd come to a kind of a good point where we got some level of skill. We weren't blue belts yet, but we were kind of half knew something about something. So we got back together with Mickey. We were doing some classes together at the karate club once a week, and we used to train in Mickey's shed then as well. So he had mats out in his shed, and we'd go out there for a few hours and we'd just pull apart all the positions and try our best to try and make sense out of it. And we kept practicing then for a while. Mickey at this stage was already a blue belt from Hoist Gracie. So the Hoist Gracie was coming to Donegal for some years, and some of the Gracies to train with Josie Murray's, do seminars there, and that's where Mickey and Francie had got their blue belts. So they were good level as well, and so eventually myself and Morgan got promoted to blue belt then as well through Hoker Gracie. And it was a different time then. You just kind of went to a seminar, you rolled, and if one of the Gracies thought you were kind of half okay, they'd give you a blue belt. So it was a lot different than it is today. And I started to compete then as well, through those years, and really worked hard together. Like we had a core group, especially with myself and Morgan and Mickey there, where we used to meet up and just try our best to figure out all these different positions and escapes and submissions and passes from different guards. There was only half guard and close guard in them days, as far as we knew about anyway. And later, as things are today, it has evolved into all sorts. But we spent a lot of time just trying to figure out the basics and what was the essential things that we needed to know. And then we started to get more into competition then. And we got to a point where we were kind of maybe a little bit stuck. We weren't sure what direction to go in. And we felt that we really wanted to get good at the grappling because we were still had our toe a bit thinking about MMA. And so we said, right, the grappling level could come up an awful lot more. There is a very good culture of striking, martial arts, boxing and kickboxing and that in Sligo already. So, and the karate club is quite good too. So we decided to focus our attention into the grappling fully. And we made huge strides then as a result because all our attention was going into one area. We still needed the guidance. So after talking to a few people, we eventually got in touch with the Alliance Jiu-Jitsu Association. And we reached out to Ramiro Jacare and chatting away, and we came to an agreement, and we joined the association, and immediately we brought Bruno Malfacini over to teach us here in Sligo, who at that time was maybe 3 or 4 times world champion, black belt, and one of the best in the world. So we brought him over to Sligo, and still, we were still at a very early stage in our training at that time. So it was a huge experience, amazing experience. We had brought some black belts before, but never someone to that standard, like one of the best. Even now today is one of the most highly decorated in the sport. But to have him at that time was amazing. And there's a few really great black belts around Ireland that were at that camp back then as well. So everyone got a huge boost out of that. So that was our first kind of eye-opener to the highest level. And we continued that. Myself and Morgan went out to Atlanta to train at the Alliance HQ with Ramiro Jacare, and Lucas Lepri was there at that time. And the room was full of world champions at all the belts from blue, purple and brown and black belt, of course. So we trained there for the Pan Am's camp. And we did a kind of instructor training course to deliver the fundamentals then when we came back, a fundamentals program. But we got huge experience there in Atlanta. It was a big trip for us because we got to roll with all these high-level people, and we were quite happy with ourselves then coming back that we could hold our own in many situations with a lot of the guys of that level at our kind of weight and rank. And so that was a massive experience. And then it just continued over the next years that we brought in more guys like Michael Lange. We had here in Sligo for 2 weeks doing camps, and we had 2 years in a row. Then we had Lucas Lepri, Gabriel Goulart, Thomas Lisboa. We brought in Isaac Behance, Cobrinha, and then we brought in Jon Thomas, and we had Espen here, and last year we had Max Schneider doing a takedown camp, all judo and wrestling expert. So a diverse amount of different types of people, but unbelievable experience, just to get to train with all these guys and help us progress up through the ranks all the way. Like we were just promoted to blue or purple belt by Bruno Malfacini then during that camp. And we progressed through the ranks with Michael Lange promoted us to brown belt, and then Ramiro Jacare came over and he promoted us to black belt in 2017. So it was a great couple of years there, and a lot of development. We competed a lot all over the country. Did travelled around Europe and to Europeans, and really just fantastic experience to be able to train with so many great people and then to compete at all these big events. So that's some kind of a summary anyway of some of the stuff we've been up to.
It's quite a busy story. I'm just picturing the Gracies just out in Donegal, walking out and about, and no one knowing who they are. And if everyone in the jiu-jitsu community is probably like, it's the Gracies. Like, that is crazy. In Donegal.
Yeah.
And over the years, I'd imagine your approach to training has adapted. How has it adapted compared to when you first started to modern day?
Yeah, like in the early days, it was very rudimentary, and probably many clubs share the same around Ireland, because most clubs kind of started from scratch without any instructor, so to speak. There was a lot of people who had, say, an external instructor advising them, and So our training was pretty rudimentary. It was kind of like, right, this is a mount escape. Right, let's do about 10 rounds and see what happens, And that went on for a long time, and there's a certain amount you can get, certain point you get to, but then it gets to the point, right, we can't really get any more. We're just rolling around here. We're just killing each other. And some people call that the era of the survivors, where people just went at it with no particular plan. There wasn't much instruction overall. And the toughest survived in the end, or maybe the craziest ones that kept coming back. So we kept coming back for some reason. But we loved it. But we knew there was some more different direction we need to go. And that's when we got in touch with Alliance and we started to work on their program. So we did their program for probably 10 years with the fundamentals program that they have and intermediate programs and that. But we left the Alliance Association about 4 years ago, and we were exploring different types of training methods, and we came across the constraint-led approach, or some people call the ecological approach. And we gave that a go, and immediately the results were exceptional. So we decided to continue on with that. And since that point, we completely revamped our program, changed completely the fundamentals program. More, you could say, like, we went back to the roots of what the whole game is about and tried to come up with an overall framework of what exactly we wanted a beginner to learn and how they would progress through the game. So we fleshed that out then, and we developed a fundamentals program to introduce a new person with no experience into the game, and then gave them enough that they could go to the next level. So we used to have 3 levels, like a fundamentals, an intermediate, and advanced. Now we just have fundamentals and then the Gaeilge Jiu-Jitsu or no Gaeilge Jiu-Jitsu. So it's either, there's no advanced, so to speak, because once the guys can learn how to grapple, then we start to layer on the other skills that they need, and everyone is in the one environment, and from white belt up to black belt.
And maybe you could explain like some of the games that you've applied to this training, because I've heard so many people talk about the ecological approach. I had Rowan Lovett, on the podcast there recently, and his gym has adapted it. And it's something I am curious about, because obviously it's kind of a buzzword at the moment, but I haven't got much knowledge on it myself.
Yeah, so like from it's not just the games, like that is kind of like, some people would say it's about games, because that's what I think you'd see online shared. So it's a lot of, but the whole thing is the concept that the athlete, we take the athlete, and there's the 3 points of on a triangle, is the environment, the individual, and the task, and they're the main things that can be manipulated to get the goal that you want, the task outcome. So the goal of jiu-jitsu, it depends how people put that into their philosophy and training. So what is your goal in jiu-jitsu? Most people, or a lot of people, say it's to get to submission, but that is probably not the primary goal. It's kind of a goal that you'd have to achieve other goals before you can do that. So positional dominance, in my opinion, is the goal of jiu-jitsu. So you must be able to dominate a person completely and isolate them in such a fashion that you're able to then apply the submission. Because if you can't do that, it's like, I put the analogy to the guys here sometimes of a football match where you have, you could score from, technically speaking, you could score from anywhere on the pitch. You could score a goal from the halfway line if the goalkeeper's not paying attention, but typically most goals are scored inside the box and one-on-one with the keeper, if you were to break it down. So it's kind of like a probability of where you're going to get the result. So if teams just focused on, let's say, the submission is the kick from the halfway line, that's like the flying armbar or the Hail Mary type submissions. And it's not to say they don't work, because they can work from in the right moment. But if a student works on the proper skills to penetrate the defenses of the opposition and get into a point where they can then apply the submission, then if they keep doing that on a regular basis, they're going to have more success over time. So that's how I would frame it from that point of view.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, you're neutralizing the threat so that you can apply, obviously, your game / submission to it. Would that be a good way of kind of putting it?
Yeah, so for me, there is 3 main positions in jiu-jitsu. There's the standing position, the guard, top and bottom, and then you have the pin, top and bottom. And you have to navigate your way from the standing through the guard into the pin, and then you can apply the submission. And there's always exceptions to that, like that someone could just drop on a footlock or a guillotine from the standing and that. But as a general rule, they are the areas that are going to be used the most often. And, someone could catch a different submission from outside, from the guard, from the bottom in guard. But overall, we want to have a good level of skill, like from all those positions, that we understand them very well. And then you can specialize into whatever area that you think is going to be the best for you, whether some people specialize in the leg attacks or maybe taking the back or some guillotines. So there's always room for that then as well, but you layer that on top of having a solid fundamental understanding of the overall game. And we've seen it over the years where there's specialists, I often see at lower belts, where they're very good at a very specific game, but then as they go up through the ranks, then it becomes more exposed because the defensive posture and the skills of the higher belts are not so easy to manipulate, so their specific game may not work, so they have to be more diverse. And some guard players that were very explicitly only guard players at brown belt win a world championship, then went to black belt and didn't have the same success because those guys were so good at shutting them down on top that they had to, in some ways, start again in other positions. So their top game had to become better. They had to get better at takedowns. For anyone that kind of moved over then into ADCC, then they had to develop a wrestling game then as well that may have been neglected in the past. And I can see that the value in some teams would, like, just for if you were competing in IBJJF rules, you would, a lot of teams, depending on, they might have a small mat space, they might say, well, we won't bother with takedowns. We won't even train them. We just work on the guard pull and work from there. And you could see the value in that because of the rule set, that could be a better use of their time. Where, just from our point of view, our goal is to build a more well-rounded grappler rather than a win for a specific rule set, whether it be IBJJF or EBI or ADCC, so that we would produce someone that has good standing position, good guard top and bottom, and a good sense of how to attack and defend from pin positions. And then their submissions usually become their own specialty after that, what they prefer, where they find themselves on a regular basis.
That's really interesting. And I know that your gym has a belt testing system that you do. Maybe you could walk us through that. Is it very similar? You're ensuring that all the students have a certain level of fundamentals and other criteria. Is that how you would grade it, or?
Yeah, so we have 3 tests: blue, purple, and brown. So they'll have to go through those 3 tests. So for the blue belt test, we base attendance for stripes. So it's more of an incentive then for that belt at the white belt to try and get up to the blue belt level. And then you would do a test with a set amount of moves. I think we have 45 positions that you need to show. And the positions you'd have to, in all the different domains that I mentioned there, standing, guard and pins, and show some basic submissions. And you wouldn't have to show anything specific. We would just ask to show us 3 forward direction takedowns. So if someone's pushing into you, moving forward, can you take them down? If someone's moving back, can you take them down? If you grab their legs, can you take them down? And the student would choose what they want. Typically, there's only a few answers to those questions anyway. So it could be a single leg and a double leg. would be the options for leg grab takedowns. Then we'd have 4 ways to pass the guard, or 1 way to open the closed guard, and it could be any way. But they're essential skills. If someone can't open a closed guard, they're going to be stuck there. So they need to be able to get out. And then during the training, we're not as strict or particular on the blue belt as we would on the other belts. So we want to get the student to a certain level of understanding more so than competency at that point. And then the competency will be more important as we go up to through the next ranks. And the test, we still have a test where there's a demonstration needed. But we would be also more observant on the mats, on the training, and see how they're getting on, which is easier to do as you go up the belts, because there's so many white belts. It's hard to get so individualistic, and you're just trying to get them to a standard because they have so much to learn anyway. But at the blue and purple belt, you can really hone in on that, and the brown belt as well. So the brown belt, we don't have a test for the black belt, so that's observational. But as you go to a purple belt, you're doing a purple belt test. It's a larger test. There's maybe 120 or 130 positions to show from different scenarios. What would you do in this scenario or that? What would you do? How would you recover from the turtle position in certain scenario? Mount, back, pins of knee on belly. And then, so the brown belt, then there's I think there's 200 different positions to show from all sorts of different places. And it's a fairly comprehensive test. The guys take a good bit of time to study. And the main reason for that as well is that they have a wide understanding. Whether they use the moves in sparring on a regular basis, it isn't so important to us. We just want them to have a wide understanding of the game, so that they carry the essence of jiu-jitsu forward, so that they're getting their belt, and it is about jiu-jitsu, not about being a grappler as well, not just being a tough guy, that they know the positions well, they have a good understanding of the leverage and the technique involved to apply a sweep or a submission or a setup. So we think that's very important to keep the integrity of the sport there as well. So it could be the case that you have a young guy that's very strong and athletic, and he's doing very well in the training. Say he's a purple belt, and he's given all the brown and black belts a hard time because he has good skills, but on top of that, he's super flexible. He's very athletic and strong. So some of those attributes can disguise the level of skill that he has. So we have to be watching that very carefully, because when you do get to the higher levels, all that stuff is easily shut down, because the guys at the black belt level are very strong, they're very athletic, they're very well skilled, and have great physical attributes overall. So it gives a little bit of a way that we can analyze on a kind of an objective level, but also there's the characteristics that we can't manage is like age and commitment to training. Like some people can train 6 days a week, multiple times, and some people are young and athletic. Some people are coming from a job, and they just want some activity to do. So we have to weigh up all those things as well during the whole process. So it's not a very easy process, is the belt system, and I don't think there's any perfect solution to it either. I sometimes think, our system isn't perfect, but we have a system nonetheless that we can gauge students over time. And I think that's the most important, that you have some kind of standard rather than being more arbitrary, that you would just say, oh yeah, that guy's a blue belt now, or, so you're working towards something. And as we have no test for the black belt, that would be just a more observational thing. So I would go to the brown belt and say, like, this is the specific area you need to be working on now, that you're struggling with that. That seems to be a hole in your game that I think would be beneficial to try and plug that up and get them to that next level, and that's how I would approach on that particular belt, because it's a hard one to assess exactly, with all those factors thrown in.
And for your belt tests, is that set time every year? Like I know some gyms would have just say around May and October is their set dates.
No, we don't do a set date. I know some people do, but we don't. We just do it whenever they're ready. And if they're ready for the test, they go and do it. We organise a time and we do the test.
And that could be anytime throughout the year. And do you select students to come in for them to do the test with, or?
Yeah, so usually once they get to the fourth stripe, we'll say now you're
Flag.
once you get to the fourth stripe, now you can go ahead and do the test. And I wouldn't put someone towards the test if I didn't think they could do it, because I don't want to fail someone on the test. So it's only on very rare occasions that it's happened that someone's failed. And I think that was on our behalf as coaches, that was a mistake to put them for the test on our side, that we should have put them, told them to have more time and study and practice a bit more and get a little bit more skill before we come to that point where they do the test. So it doesn't happen too often, or it's very rare. But yeah, we'd make sure that there was a time that they were comfortable with and we were comfortable. There'd be like times coming up to Christmas or something like that, I just say I'm not doing any belt testing within these couple of weeks, because if I do the brown belt test, it's actually very intense for me as well, because when I'm watching the guys, I'd say I'd very focus in on, like highly focus in on what they're doing. And like for an hour and a half of this focus, I'm just burnt out with, because we do put a lot into it, and they put in a lot into it as well. And so I set certain times in the year where it's going to be a good time to do it, where that suits both of us, and but sometimes we won't do it if it's not good timing around holidays or things like that.
No, that's totally understandable. They're usually the most chaotic times of the year. So throwing a belt testing on top just adds to that stress level. And I just want to touch on, you mentioned about how you brought the likes of Lucas Lepri and the camps over. I've been to a few of them. I've been to the Lucas Lepri, Jon Thomas and Espen one, and they are phenomenal. I've added all the techniques that I was shown into my game and was able to have a lot of people in the gym puzzled about a few of those techniques. So what I'd like to know is, where did the idea of bringing these world-class competitors and instructors over to Sligo for these camps?
Yeah, so when we joined the Alliance Association back in 2011, one of the parts of our agreement with Alliance was to bring someone over once per year, at least once per year. And so 2011, we were like, okay, Bruno Malfacini was available, so we brought him over, and he came over for almost 2 weeks. And so that was our main reason, but it was part of what we wanted as well, as much as it was an agreement between the association. But that was what was the selling point for us, was that we were able to bring the guy over for that length of time, not just a seminar, not just a weekend, but it was 2 weeks with the best of the best in the world. And it's like Bruno and the guys that would stay with me at the house. So I would also just try to get as much information about every sort of thing as you can imagine out of the guys, and so I'd be quizzing them up night, noon and morning about everything, about matches, about things they did in matches, about training, about conditioning, nutrition, you name it. I was just asking everything to them, so they were getting tired of doing, all right, I need to go to bed. So that was how the camp started. Then it was part of it, but then we really enjoyed it. It started really picking up over the years as well, and a lot of people travelled from not just around Ireland but all over Europe as well, came to Sligo for the camps. There's some great people that were blue belts came here, and now are really, really impressive black belts, that came to the camps back in the day. So it has a great history, and we learned so much from those camps. And part of that was the guys that came as well, like a lot of really good guys from around the country that we got to come to Sligo, and we got great training with them too, as much as the world champions that we got. So it was a great interaction. We make great friends, and so much good came out of those times as well. We hope to continue that on for many more years as well.
100%. And when you are selecting these instructors to come over, is it based on maybe they have a technique style that you want to learn more about? Maybe you're curious about learning their techniques that they've used to win world championships, or have you a certain criteria that you're looking for?
Yeah, it could, on my part, it's probably a bit selfish, and I just look at the guys that I look up to. I says, yeah, that's the fella I want. And like at my competitive weight was like I was coming around 61, 62 kilos, so I wanted to learn from lighter guys, So we rarely had brought someone heavyweight. I don't think we ever had a heavyweight here. Like I think Isaac Behance was probably the heaviest person we brought in, was a middleweight. So typically we get someone on the lighter end of the spectrum. And that was kind of, in some ways, for my benefit as well. I wanted to learn from the guys in that weight class. And most of the like myself and Morgan, be the lighter side. But in looking back, there is a couple of the heavier weights that we would like to get over, but just didn't get the opportunity. Didn't work out. But that was probably one of the main criteria. And then the game, like looking back to Michael Lange, was the Spider Guard specialist of the day, and I loved that game and learned a ton of that game off him. And then Lucas Lepri, of course, was just like a machine, passing everyone like every sort of way. So good. Like that camp was one of the best camps ever. Was so good of his ability to shut people down and just control the role, where once he got a certain inch on you, like it was almost over at that point, and you hadn't even been passed yet. So it was fantastic. And of course, we had Lucas back in January then as well, and he's only got even better since then. He'd won his first world title. He won the first one when his first year of black belt, and he didn't win for a few years then. And he won again in 2014, just when he came to us that year. And then I think he'd won another 4 titles after that. I could be wrong on the numbers, but he'd won some world championships without getting a point scored on. And you could see how he could do it, because he's so good. And he's kind of well known for a passer, but he's so good on the bottom as well, and good in every area. And he was one guy I looked up to a lot. We met him in Atlanta in 2011, and Lucas was good standing, he was good on his back, and he was good passing. He was good in all the domains, where some of the other guys were more specialist guard players. So I thought that was amazing with Lucas. So we had to get him over that time. We brought him back then again in January, and he did gi and no gi as well. So his no gi game is actually fantastic as well. Like you seen, we were talking about Lachlan Giles when he went up at the ADCC, and he says, how did you defend the false reap? He says, I don't know, I just don't like people getting on my legs. So he's like, his game is so tight and so good, and a real pleasure to train with him. Definitely, if anyone gets the opportunity, it's well worth it. Like Cobrinha, another phenom, like totally high level, super strong and super athletic and flexible, and skill level is off the charts. Was a great pleasure to train with him too. And then we'd brought in Jon Thomas then in 2019. And that was a fantastic camp for me. Like I'd met Jon in Atlanta back in 2011. And I think Jon was a brown belt world champion, the adult level at that time. Had just won it. And we could see him in the gym just throwing fellas around the place with his spider guard, and, just really good. So got in touch with Jon then, because he'd kind of... I'd lost touch with him, and then he came up and he was on set up YouTube, and he'd been going well on that. I'd seen some of his stuff. I thought, wow, need to get Jon over. Some of that stuff is fantastic. So I brought Jon in, and Jon likes a lot of double sleeve, as he calls it, spider guard, and I loved that game as well. I play a lot of that, so I was thinking, well, we'll get Jon in, and he totally changed my approach to it. Like, I was playing that for years. It was already a black belt at that time, but Jon, his approach to the whole game as well is off the charts. Like, he's such a great thinker, a great mind, how he analyzes things and breaks it down. And as far as kind of a jiu-jitsu genius, I'd say Jon is like way up there. It's the level he's performing at and the skill that he has and the way he can break down people's games. Very rarely have I seen anything like that. It's fantastic. Big change it made for me. Huge changes on all positions, and not just the guard where he's more well known for it, but his passing is ridiculously good. His escapes, his pins, everything. So that was a great experience as well.
I was here for the Jon and Espen gi seminar. I came for the gi one just because I saw they were doing De La Riva and passing, and at the time that's what I was really putting my focus into. And just as you said, the concepts the two of them showed completely changed how I approached De La Riva, even passing De La Riva. And then again, I was here for the Lucas Lepri gi seminar, and the hook sweep from De La Riva that he showed, unbelievable. And I still use it, and I'm going to continue to use it as much as possible. And over the years, has there been anyone that stood out the most for you, or your favorite camp, if you want to play favoritism, of course?
Well, I would say that the first camp we had with Jon in 2019, because we had 3 camps with Jon, and I'd say that first one, that was a big eye opener. Big changes happened after that for me personally, and a lot of the guys here, like Morgan too, took an awful lot from that, and a lot of the other good players here that have taken a lot from all positions that he showed. But then the next year as well that he came back, he showed even more and just broke down things in another way on some different positions. And then with himself and Espen together, I thought that was one of my favourite camps as well. Like so many good ones, it's hard to choose. But that was great because you had the 2 lads there and they work very well together. They've set up a new team, the Mavericks, together, and they're both of them are great characters, but also worked really well on the mats as well, over and back, because if Espen was showing some kind of crab ride stuff, like Jon was able to jump in over the other side of the mat and be helping you out with that as well. And maybe Jon would have a slightly different perspective on it, or just open your eyes in another way as well. And Espen knew Jon's game inside out as well. So that was a really eye-opening one as well. Something special now. And hopefully be able to get them together again some stage.
If you do, I will probably be the first person to sign up for that camp.
Oh, brilliant.
And just even speaking of camps, have you any, I know usually around August you run like the summer camp. Is there going to be one coming this year?
Yeah, there will be. We'll have the summer camp will be on the August bank holiday weekend, August 1st to the 4th, 4 days. And we'll be bringing Jon Thomas back again for another camp this year. So there's the exclusive announcement there.
You've heard it first, folks. That's incredible. I'm looking forward to that. I will definitely be signing up for that one.
You're welcome down. And it's open to anyone as well. That we'll have all the information up on our Instagram or our Facebook, the website. But it's open to any clubs. That we always get a good sign up from people from abroad, even from Europe and from around the country. And it's a great weekend. It's very good, like bit of camaraderie and some good training and lots of fun. So
awesome. I'm definitely going to make sure to share that for anyone who's following the podcast. I know it's a small following, but you never know, someone might end up coming to it from it. And just to do a bit of a look back on your whole time in jiu-jitsu, when you were starting first compared to now, is there anything that you wish you understood or focused on more intently?
Well, I guess when we started off first, it was the Wild West, and many of us were we were just happy to be there, and we were just enjoying it. We were learning so much about all this different stuff, and we were looking forward every day to getting down and training and going to the competitions and all that. So I don't think there's anything I would have done different, because we actually made the best of what we had. At the time, we were in like a small town in the northwest of Ireland with not much history of grappling here. We had a few great pioneers with Mickey and Francie and some of the other lads from the karate that pushed ahead and kind of were open-minded enough to go out and look at some other styles and bring them back. And we got involved and thought, I couldn't see anything that I would change about it, because it happened in a kind of a special time, that it was kind of a raw new thing, and we just worked really hard to build it to where it is today. Probably later on there's other things, like, in the, say, when we came to the purple or brown belt level, there's probably things at that time maybe you could have done a wee bit differently, but that's in hindsight, looking back, having done the things, because you only know what you should have done when you've done it. But we were always determined to make the best of what we had. Some of the guys were like, oh, there's bigger clubs in Dublin, or there's bigger clubs in the bigger cities. We'd never be able to compete with them. So I was, okay, that's challenge accepted. Let's go. And so we went competed with everyone and had a lot of good success all over. So we never let anything get in the way of pushing forward and trying to achieve something within the sport, and sometimes when people are saying it can't be done, that's the time to push on and get something done.
And you've had a really good career competing as well. Is it something that you're still doing, or are you mainly just focused on the coaching aspect?
Yeah, today mainly coaching, but it was one of my favourite things to do, was to compete. I competed, like, the first Irish Open, I think it was 2005, we were there at it, and that was I only got the gi about 2 weeks before. We had to order it from Brazil, and so we competed there, myself and Morgan and some of the other lads, and I competed at nearly every Irish Open up to a certain point for a good few years, and then started to compete in around Europe. Then went to the London Open, had good success at the London Open, the Irish Open. Was able to win the Euros twice, purple and brown, Master 1, and that was probably the highest achievement that I had in the sport. And those were great times, like, because we put so much work into being able to achieve that as well at that stage, and I was very happy with that. So I love to compete, but maybe the last 5 or 6 years now I've been just struggling with injury, so I haven't been able to get back out on the competition scene. So now I'd focus mainly on the coaching, and we have a great team of guys now. The Irish Open is coming up now in a few weeks, and all the guys here are training hard for it, and there is a great group of competitors here. They're working really well together, and some people just compete occasionally. We now have also a young generation of students coming up as well, which we developed in our kids program over the last 10 years, and are starting to come to that age now where they're 16, 17 years old, and have a lot of training under their belt, where we don't put the children groups to compete until they get to a certain point, usually a certain point of maturity physically, and then maybe 14, 15, but it's case by case. It depends on the individual, and then we'll allow them to start to enter the competitions. So we don't bother with it at like 7 up to 14 age group, but that gives them time to assimilate the skills and build their bodies and develop and mature as well. And we want to build a love of the sport, not medals and accumulation of medals. We want to build a love of the sport where they come in and have great memories. So we have to remember that the children are at a very important age in life, where they look back when they're adults and they say, I enjoyed that time. It wasn't all about winning medals. It was a great time coming in, training with friends and throwing each other around and just having a good time with the over and back in jiu-jitsu. But there's always a good time shaking hands and hug afterwards and be ready for the next training. And that's built a great atmosphere in our youth program. So we see that now as they start to compete and start to look towards progressing on the competition scene now as well. So let's see how those boys get on. We're looking forward to cheering them on and coaching them and seeing how they get on in the future as well. And there's many more adult competitors then. We have a great masters squad here as well. And a lot of those guys are training hard and well-seasoned competitors who are really looking forward to the Irish Open now as well.
You can never count the Masters out.
Never count the Masters out.
I know that when people start competing, they adjust different aspects of their life to be more beneficial for their jiu-jitsu training, whether it's their nutrition or their strength and conditioning. Was this something that you did when you were competing?
Oh, absolutely. Like when I started to compete first, say the first Irish Open that I did, I remember coming off the mat and like all my arms were completely seized up. I don't think my mouth was completely dried up, and it was like a shock to the system. I was totally unprepared for doing that, and in some ways there's no way around it. You just have to get in there and do that, and then you find kind of the equilibrium of it in time. So I competed for a good few times, a long time before I found that. And so I first of all, I realized that physically when I came into the sport, I wasn't strong at all, or wasn't prepared body-wise. The body wasn't ready for it. So I had to go and address that. So I think there wasn't like it's amazing how far things have come in fitness in general and gyms and things like that around the country. Because in Sligo at that time, I think there was only one gym, or and nobody really went there unless you were kind of a bodybuilder or something. So there wasn't much. There was some kind of hotel gyms, like the ones that have ripped seats and the equipment didn't really work, and there'd be some of that, and maybe there'd be a swimming pool. So there wasn't much gyms in 2004, 2005. It wasn't really till the economic crash when gyms became much bigger, because people kind of went away from the certain lifestyle habits, like pub kind of started to die off then as well. And it's getting more and more every year. There's less pubs, and there seems to be a bit more push towards physical activity. But so there was no personal trainers. Now you could throw a stone out the window and you'd hit 2 personal trainers. They're everywhere. And I'm a qualified personal trainer as well myself, because I done the qualification at college when I was there. But now there's any amount of information. There's great people to train people, but there was nothing like that at the time. So to figure out a lot of stuff ourselves. And then there was nothing on nutrition. Because even if you think about those times, I think YouTube only came out in 2006, and still the internet wasn't that great that you could watch a video on it anyway. And it's only in the last maybe 10 years that it became a fairly good resource. So we had to find out about nutrition and getting books on it and reading up on all that kind of stuff. So I had to completely overhaul my whole life, actually, my lifestyle, everything, just because I wanted to compete. Because I hadn't had any understanding of that. I didn't even know what a weight class was or anything like that. I didn't know that I was the lowest end of the weight classes, what that meant in the gym, training with every guy. So then I focused a lot on the strength and conditioning, the nutrition, and then as I was going to competing, it was more then the psychology of it, that I was getting nervous and I wasn't able to perform on the day in the competition like I did in training, and I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. So I had to try and figure that out as well. And with all that, it was, most people wouldn't do it, and I put a lot of work into it myself. It completely changed my life in order to be able to train jiu-jitsu and be able to compete as well, and it was a great motivation for me.
No, I'd say so. Especially that mindset one about the competition. Could you share some tips on that? Because I know myself, I can be in the gym and I'll do really well, but then when it comes to competition, I can't turn up.
Yeah, I would say when I went to the first couple of competitions and up to probably the late stages of the blue belt, I was struggling a lot kind of on all the levels, because physically, nutrition, everything, going up to a competition and eating a breakfast roll or something like that beforehand or something like that would be the kind of standard. And you'd be like, oh, what's wrong with that? But as I straightened out all the more so the strength and conditioning and the nutrition, then it left the mental stuff that you at least knew what you were trying to figure out. And so I was getting to competitions, wasn't getting the results that I want. More on the attitude that I had going in, that I thought, these guys are good, and they're probably going to beat me anyway, and just didn't perform. You'd be kind of a step behind, and they'd get the jump on me, and so I was losing in ways that I shouldn't have, and I knew it, So I went back to the drawing board, and I remember getting a sports psychology book, and I did a bit of sports psychology when I was in college as well. Part of the course I did. I learned a bit more about it then after, but just learned a few things. And then from my own kind of assessment of myself, like when I was there, I realized that I was having these kind of adrenaline dumps on the day, where you'd go to compete, and maybe the first match would be all right, but the next one, everything was just dead, full of lactic acid, and you're barely able to move, getting rubbed out by the lads, and which never happened to me at the gym. So after realizing that, I felt like I had to go through a different process for preparation for the competition. So I realized that what I was doing was I was blocking out thinking about the competition until that day. And then when I started thinking about it, the nervous energy would build up, and I'd have that kind of adrenaline dump, and this lactic acid would build up in my body, and as soon as I go to compete, then I'd be dying. So I realized, okay, all right, I thought to myself, well, what if I start thinking about all this stuff the week before? So maybe we were competing the Saturday, on the Sunday or the Monday leading up to it. I started really getting into it mentally about all the things I was worried about, all the fears that I would have had about losing, or if this happened or that happened. And I accepted then about losing that it was okay to lose, but only if you gave 100% of yourself on the mat. So by going in on all that, like I was thinking, oh yeah, well, if you're sick on the day, if your stomach feels bad on the day, what are you going to do? Still compete. If you have an injury, what are you going to do? Still compete. You're going to give 100%? 100%. And just having these chats, so you're going through, some people don't want to go into the negative stuff. So I say, no matter what happens, if I'm injured, if I feel sick, if there's a problem that I have in my life, no matter what happens, I'm going to give 100%. Can I guarantee the win? No, I can't guarantee it, but I can guarantee 100%. So I went to the competitions after that, and at that I was probably purple belt at this stage, and I had to compete in middle heavy, even though I'm light feather, So I was competing against a lot of bigger guys, and it was tough going. But I lost a good few matches, but not for the want of any of my preparation. So I lost on very narrow decisions and stuff like that. But I was happy with the result, in the sense that I performed well every time. So then I started to travel more to go to different tournaments. I was able to fight in my weight class. And then I was able to get better results then. And I was getting a lot of wins then when I was fighting in my own weight. And often I brought that intensity into the matches, because I felt that if we go hard in this match and I lose, I know if I fight the guy again, that he's going to be a bit worried about it, because he knows it's going to be a scrap. He knows it's going to be a tough match. So every match is going to be a hard one, whether I'm with someone and I was able to beat people in matches that were a lot better than me as a result of putting that kind of pace into the match, and putting that kind of attitude where it's just like, if you do mount me, it's still not over, that I will be back. I will fight to the death to get out of here. So you committed a lot mentally to try, and for me, some people could come in day one and already have that sorted out. But for me, that took me a couple of years to get to that point. But then that served me well in all the tournaments after that. Mentally then I was just bulletproof. When, like, in European finals and things like that, it was nothing to me at the time. I was just like, there's a guy, let's go. Even I forgot to celebrate afterwards. I was that focused on it. It's just like, oh yeah, we won there.
It's a great shift in your mindset there, and that is something I will definitely be stealing influence from. And Ryan, I have this reoccurring question that I ask everyone, but where do you see the future of Jiu-Jitsu heading?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, it's a hard one to answer. I have a few thoughts on it, but one we discuss here sometimes, myself and Morgan, where the future of it is. Like I hear a lot of conversations, something people saying gi and no gi, this kind of separation, where personally I don't see any major difference to me. I know obviously the difference is the clothing that's worn, but to me it's just grappling. You go in, if you like gi, you into the gi, and if you like the no gi, go into it, and even if you don't like the gi, go and do it anyway. Sure, you're a grappler. What's the jacket like? Just go at it. We were kind of no gi starting off. We got into the gi, then we were no gi, and then but I love the both in that sense. But then I think the sport is kind of getting a little bit more, somewhat professionalized. It's going down in some ways, and say, like, for me, it's about the children, the kids, and promoting it to kids. And I just seen some things I seen with the CJI, the way it's promoted, and that I didn't like, and some aspects of ADCC and in the world level. I think the use of performance enhancing drugs, being so blatant and so openly used, I think something needs to be done about that, because people, like adults, do whatever they want to do. It doesn't bother me if that's what their choice is, but there's new generations, children coming up through the sport. I think that's extremely important, that they get the right message, that if you want to perform in this sport, that you have to get involved in these performance enhancing drugs. I don't think it's a good message. I don't think it ends well in the long run. So as myself and Morgan here discuss a lot, it's looking at other martial arts over the years and how they evolve. Often we see to a certain degree is that the children program, or the kids programs, will grow more, because as our generation were young, starting off all these clubs. Now, like, I'm 44 now, and a lot of the instructors are getting well into their 40s and into their 50s, and they're not competitors anymore. So they're sitting back more and having a look at what's going on. And many have kids, so they're trying to provide an environment for their kids as well, and for their friends and family, where the kids can come up in the sport, and it's going to be better for them than for their kids than it was for them, myself included. Like, when I came up, it was very, very brutal. I got a lot of injuries as a result from kind of more hardcore training that was in some ways unnecessary. So you provide better training methods and just safety in general for these young generation. So I see a lot of focus going into the kids programs in the future. From a business point of view, often it's easier to teach adults because you don't need that many instructors. You don't need to have that much standards. So you could have one instructor and you could have 30 or 40 people in the room. Where you have a kids class, you could have 20 kids and you need 3 or 4 coaches there. So that is a little bit of a setback from that point of view, where jiu-jitsu is very commercialized compared to GA or another sport where coaches are volunteers. And but when you look at, we would have friends that were from karate as well, and you see it, and other martial arts, you see a lot more towards the kids programs. And if you see the Irish championships in those martial arts, it's a lot more kids compete than adults, and the adults tend to drop off in around 18 to 20 year old. But jiu-jitsu has been so different to that, where it has an amazing group of adults. However, the more that goes into kids, when those kids become 18, their development is much better. They're athletically strong and their movement capacity is very good. And then the adult that's 35 trying to join, and there's these kids that are in phenomenal shape, it's going to be much more difficult then in the future. So programs may either just become more focused on the youth, or they may have to separate into competitor and recreational. And in some places they do that. There is a recreational groups, there's competition teams that they just don't really go together on the mats, because like a guy who's starting in his late 30s, who's a wider blue belt, and you have a young 22-year-old, early 20s, who's a competitor, it's very hard for them to train together and get something beneficial out of it as well, so it's a hard one to answer for sure, but there are a few of the things I see develop over the last few years as well.
Awesome. Ryan, I just want to thank you again for taking the time to come on the podcast, sharing some amazing information. And again, the exclusive about the Jon Thomas camp, that was fantastic. Thank you for that. And the last question I have for you is, if anyone wanted to get in touch with you, maybe they want to come down and train with you in Atlantic, where is the best places to reach you? And is there anything else you would like to discuss, or any upcoming events that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, so if you want to get in touch with us, our website is sligobjj.com. We have Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and it's all at Atlantic Sligo. And you can message us there. Keep an eye on there for news about the upcoming camps. If anyone, we have beginner courses regularly, if anyone's looking for those, if there's anyone local watching. And we also set up recently there the Instagram account for the Irish language and grappling sports, to try and promote the Irish language with jiu-jitsu, wrestling and judo as well. And that you can find that on Instagram at Gaeilge, .Gaeilge. And you might be able to put that down on the show notes. But we're looking to, with Richie McDonough from, he's originally from Connemara, is helping out. Two of us are working together with it to promote the language and build a culture of the Gaelic grappling that was once here. And it's something great that we feel is important, something that was lost, and hopefully can bring back to life. And at some stage run some camps and training fully as Gaeilge and in the future.
Amazing. And for anyone, that was the reference at the start of the episode when I asked, was he Gaeltor? So again, Ryan, thank you so much. I'll make sure to include all this information in the show notes. And once again, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Gar mille maith agat.